traditional welcome is certainly a way to get your blood going first thing in the morning. And now we'd like to invite for the lighting of the lamps so that we may illuminate the path ahead, our chief guest, Dr. Nandalal Veerasinghe, Governor of the Central Bank, Professor Dale Pinto, our keynote speaker and President CPA Australia, Mr. Heshina Kurupu, Guest of Honor and President SAFA and CA Sri Lanka, Professor Lakshman R. Vatavala, President CMA Sri Lanka and past President of CA Sri Lanka and past President of SAFA, Mr. A.N. Raman, past President of SAFA and Advisory Council member of CMA Sri Lanka, Mr. Hennayaka Bandara, Vice President CMA Sri Lanka and past President of SAFA, Mr. Kingsley Bernard, Chairman of the ADB, Mr. Dilshan Veerasekara, Chairman of the Colombo Stock Exchange, Mr. Sujiva Rajapaksa, Chairman of the People's Bank, Mr. Ruchira Pereira, Council Member of CMA. CMA Council members also Mr. S.P. Gajendra, Professor Kennedy Gunawardana, Mr. Asanga Vimalaratna, Mr. Sanjay Bandara, Mrs. Sureka Katavala. We also invite Mr. Sanat Manathunga, Managing Director and CEO of Commercial Bank of Ceylon PLC, Mr. Deepak Das, Managing Director, Lanka IOC, and Mr. Tarun Nanda, Business Development Manager, Pearson View. With that lighting of the lamp, it is a certainty that the event today will be, as they say, lit. So, in honor of the host country of this National Management Accounting Conference and the host organization, we now have the national anthem of Sri Lanka, swiftly followed by the CMA anthem.
Surani ati sobamana ක්ෂණික දැනුමින් පිරිපුන්ව ලොව දිනමින් ජය කනුව කරා පිය නගන සදා කලමනාකරන ගණකාධිකාරි විශ්ව නිකේතනයයි
CMA ශ්‍රී ලංකාவில் முதலிடம் பெறுமே அதிதொழில்நுட்பங்கள் கிடைக்கும் வென்றேங்கள் உலகத்தை வெற்றி பாதையில் தினமும் செல்வோம் முகமையாளர்களும் கணக்காளர்களும் உருவாகும் மத்தியஸ்தலம்
CMA, the best in Sri Lanka, adopting international standards, with technological advancement, management, accounting, profession globally. Recognized is full of excellence on the path to victory. තිරසර වටිනාකම් දීපනය කරමින් තිරසර වටිනාකම් දීපනය කරමින් ශක්තියෙන් ගුණෙන් අගනා ප්‍රගතිමලයෙහි දරනා විශ්වයට ඔබින දිනුරයට වටින පුරවැසියන් බිහි කරනා කලමනාකරන ගණකාධිකාරි විශ්ව නිකේතනයයි කලමනාකරන ගණකාධිකාරි විශ්ව නිකේතනයයි CMA
crisis. It's a word we've heard a lot lately, perhaps too much in the last few years. Health crisis, fuel crisis, political crisis, economic crisis, all that adds up to a lot of instability. And yet, here we are. As the World Bank report put it, seeing declining inflation, higher revenues following the implementation of new fiscal policies, and a current account surplus for the first time in nearly 5 decades. Dare we say that looks like stability? But are we to be satisfied with stability? Or is our protection from future instability to be found not just in mere stability, which is important, but in dynamic growth? And how does a nation move from playing a defensive game, as it were, to rooting out what led to instability and being assertive in its search for growth? CMA's flagship event, the 20th annual CMA National Management Accounting Conference, with a proud history, as we noted from the preceding video, held today is a gathering of experts in a quest for these answers and more. As we begin that quest, we have one who is no stranger to reform and innovative thinking, and who is also no stranger to those in this room. Professor Lakshman R. Vatavala has led professional accounting bodies, starting with the Chartered Accountants and the South Asian Federation of Accountants, having been founder of the Association of Accounting Technicians and of CMA Sri Lanka, as well as being a SAFA board member and chairman of the SAFA International Relations Committee. A proud recipient of the National Honours Sri Lanka Sikh Harmony in 2019, he was also installed in the Hall of Fame of the Institute of Chartered Accountants and was awarded the Lifetime Achievement Award by CMA Sri Lanka. He was also appointed adjunct professor in 2020 by Deakin University Business School, Melbourne, Australia, and he's a former chairman and director general of the Board of Investment of Sri Lanka, as well as a former chairman of People's Bank. He addresses us now with some words of welcome and sets the scene for the conference to come. Professor Lakshman R. Vatavala.
Good morning to you all. Value creation and now navigating stability towards dynamic growth. Our chief guest at this inaugural ceremony, Dr. Nandalal Veerasinghe, the Governor of the Central Bank of Sri Lanka. Our keynote speaker, Professor Dale Pinto, President and the Chair of the Board of CPA Australia, and John Curtin, Distinguished Professor, the Curtin Law School. Our guest of honor, Mr. Heshana Kuruppu, President of SAFA and President of the Institute of Chartered Accountants of Sri Lanka. Our Vice President, Mr. Henayaka Bandara, Council members, past Council members, distinguished invitees, President of the OPA, ladies and gentlemen. Let me welcome you to the 20th CMA National Management Accounting Conference 2024 on the theme Navigating Stability Towards Dynamic Growth. During the last few years, we have been discussing topics on the crisis situation, last year on the debt optimization, and I'm indeed happy that today we have not only speakers, but speakers who have achieved success in bringing stability to the economy. I know that our chief guest was last year there at the conference and was telling us about what is required to be done, what action is being taken, what are the recommendations of the IMF, and how it should be carried out. So in fact, you can see for today the action that has been carried out. That is the most important thing. As professional accountants, we know that it is the action that will bring the results. Not only normal action, but backed with professional knowledge, skills, and competency. That's how we achieve results. You all know the grave problems that we have faced. And of course, I don't have to go into detail, but it all depends on the professionalism, the skills, the knowledge, and how they are carried out. We as professional accountants, the CMA, are also celebrating our 25th anniversary, the Silver Jubilee. The Chartered Accountants are celebrating the 65th anniversary. They may not be aware that I was the president of the Institute when we celebrated the Silver Jubilee of the Institute of Chartered Accountants of Sri Lanka. So it's a long history. It's a long period. So 2 Silver Jubilees, I think maybe you are given a round of applause. It's something quite fitting, but I'm sure you should know that these, in the professional sense, are done on a voluntary basis. Today it is very difficult to find people who do voluntary service, but we as professional accountants have been able to do it. And we can see the results maybe to the bigger public of this country. Even if the International Federation of Interest mentioned in the International Federation of Accountants, of which we are members, they speak of the public interest. I think that's the foremost thing that we have. So just to say a few things about CMA, because I know that some of you are aware of it, but some of you may be smiling at us, but when you go back, you do something different. So I just want to tell, because I must really respect the governor of the Central Bank of Sri Lanka, because when they advertise for management trainees, the local professional accounting body, CMA Sri Lanka, is included. So I must thank him, because not only recognizing CMA, but recognizing the students who are following these programs and passing these exams, because a lot of them may be people who were not able to do these exams at a time when foreign exams were conducted. So we are there to serve the people of this country. 1/10 of the cost of a foreign program is something that is really creditable. So I just want to tell you something, because some people think that although there is a cabinet decision, although there is a ministry circular, that they should not follow it. I think that's a very bad practice, because especially if it is a state institution, they should honor those. So I think I thought that I must tell you of our association with the International Federation of Accountants. You see, the International Federation of Accountants has what is called the stated member obligations. You cannot become a member without that. Number one is the quality assurance. This quality assurance really goes for the people who are doing audits on the assurance and related services. Then SMO2 on the international education standards. Now our educational standards are based on these for professional accountants and for aspiring professional accountants. Then international standards and other procurements and the IASB. Now that's another important area issued by the International Auditing and Assurance Standards Board. So these are high standards that we are maintaining, because the local bodies do not know about this. Some of the CEOs, some of the chairmen, they do not know about it. They are just living in a world of their own. the International Code of Ethics for Professional Accountants. I think this is one of the most important things, because I had a recent interview with a foreigner, and he was asking me about the successes that I made when I was managing state corporations. So I was telling about the successes, how loss-making corporations were converted to profit-making, how the services were done to make the private sector active. Then at the end he told me, don't you think that honesty and integrity is a very important element? You see, supposing if I made a profit and put that money into my pocket, then only I realized that that is the most important thing. Anyone might say that they are making profit, but it has to be done with honesty and integrity. So that's important. Then the most important thing, international public sector accounting standards and other announcements that have been given by the International Accounting Standards Board. Now, are we doing accrual accounting? Is government accounting based on cash accounting or accrual accounting? Do we have a balance sheet? Because when you speak of balance sheet, when a budget is presented, the government assets and liabilities should be placed before the members of the parliament. But that was not done. Only when we, in a very difficult situation, we had no money to repay the loans, then we found that we have over 100 billion loans. So I think the financial management, I'm sure that there were no professionally qualified financial accountants in the public sector. Now that's another big drawback, and that has to be corrected immediately. Then of course you have the investigation and discipline, the international financial reporting standards. So these are few things I mentioned, because when we go and try to tell people about the high standards that we are maintaining, they are not really looking at these. So that's one thing. But the other important things is the value creation. I mentioned about value creation because as professional accountants, the CMA, we conduct what's called the CMA Excellence in Integrated Reporting Awards. What is the real purpose of that? The purpose of that is to identify public quoted companies. I see the chairman of the Colombo Stock Exchange. They are combining with us, and they show the value they are creating to the stakeholders. Today, no one is talking of profit. What is the value you are creating to stakeholders? Now, this is very important because you see, the IMF has said that we should go on a cost reflective or maybe on a cost based pricing mechanism. As a result of that, the petroleum industry that was running at a big loss, they were able to make profits. The electricity board were able to make profits. But there is another important thing in the electricity sector. Everyone thinks that this is a very simple industry, but it is really comprising so many components. If you think that we produce, I know that when I was chairman of the People's Bank, the biggest customer of the bank was the Ceylon Electricity Board. They had the highest deposits in this country. And do you know the raw material they were using at that time? It was water, free of charge. Then they changed to thermal, and then the strategies were not changed. As a result, there was a big problem. Last year, they revised the prices. They said that we are going to have a severe drought, and then the prices have to be increased. What happened? At the end of the year, they made a massive profit, 70 to 80 billion profit, because there was a rainfall. So we need to see how we can get this free water, collect it, and keep it, and in order that we can prosper without wasting the valuable foreign exchange. So I think at one time the electricity board did a pricing where the price was taken, and when the energy price is required, they made a fuel adjustment charge. I think if they did it even the previous year, there would have been no problem. But there is a very important thing as the cost is concerned. Today we find that although almost 80% of the material is being used, there is no costing department. There is no separate cost records being maintained. If these are not maintained today, we can't do anything. The government has, I think, a big task to do, because pricing has today become a very important element in all goods. Everyone says price is going up, but no one knows how the price is calculated. They must make it mandatory that everyone should maintain cost records. Especially in the banks, they take loans. But if they don't make the cost records, if they don't maintain records, then it's a real problem. So I think these things, if they are done, then the accountants will also be able to play a major role. And today we come to the final new term of societal costing. I think Mr. Raman is here from India, where he told us of the importance of societal costing. Ultimately, all this price has to be paid by the society. So we are we have a role to play, but unfortunately, maybe people are not recognizing it, people are not doing it, but because very many, I know that as a financial accountant, the marketing people did not like it because we used to cut their budget. Similarly, no one will like the cost to be controlled. Because you should know that today we are in this situation, the most important thing is to control expenditure, control the costs, determine the actual costs, which means more and more professionals are required in this country. And then they must employ professionals, give them the real place in order that we can do it. So I'm sure that these will be all explained by our various speakers who are there, because we have a very good program that have been lined up. And I'm sure that the initial stages, the start would be given, because as I said, by our governor of the central bank. I must also thank the president of CPA Australia. In that regard, I must thank Professor Ho Yu Ki, our own member, plus also member of the advisory council, and also chairman of our academic advisory board, I think, who's also a member of CPA Australia, and he invited Professor Dale Pinto, and thank you very much for accepting your invitation, because today you have a very important topic that we have given you, because you are the professor in taxation law at Curtin University, and today you are going to speak on taxation policy and practice for navigating economic stability towards dynamic growth. I think this would be something that everyone is looking at, because if you see, one of the ways that the government has increased the revenue is by taxation. So whether we have other ways of collecting taxation, and especially the professionals, large number of them also leaving the country as a result of high taxation. So I'm sure that your lecture would certainly tell us in which direction we should go, and also how the professionals can benefit by this lecture. So I'm sure that this conference, we have laid down a large number of sessions that are there. I must thank each and everyone for the tremendous support they have given us. All of them have accepted our invitation, so let me thank all of them. And I must also thank those who are getting the awards today, the Business Excellence Awards, because they are some of the best people who have performed well in this country, and I must thank all of them. And I must also thank our council for all the support that they have given, and the chairman of the technical committee for their support in making this conference a success. And as I said earlier, today we should not only talk, we should know how to put things into action, and that is, there is a term that you know, I don't know whether morning, it is called the professional accountants in business. CMA professionals are professional accountants in business who will have to put things into action and show the results, the right results, which will help this country to go forward. Thank you, and all the best.
Thank you, Professor, for giving us that background information and recognizing the value creation and results achieved through professionalism, skills, knowledge, and the service rendered voluntarily in the public interest. We are able to appreciate the importance of honesty and integrity, international accounting and financial reporting standards in the public sector, societal costing, and changing strategy. Your call to action is timely, and I'm certain it will be heeded. We now have the privilege of hearing from our guest of honor. Mr. Heshna Kurupu is the president of the Institute of Chartered Accountants of Sri Lanka. He also serves as the president of the South Asian Federation of Accountants, or SAFA. Currently, he holds the role of Group Finance Director at David Pieris Group of Companies and serves as a board member for several of the group's subsidiaries. He embarked on his career at KPMG before joining First Capital Group, where he held the position of Group CFO. Subsequently, he joined MAS Group, dedicating nearly 10 years to the organization, with 6 of those years as general manager. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Heshina Kurupu.
Dr. Nandalal Veerasinghe, Governor, Central Bank of Sri Lanka, Professor Lakshmana Watawala, President, CMA Sri Lanka, Professor Dale Pinto, President, CMA Australia, Vice President Mr. Hennayak Bandar, members of the Council, members of CMA, other distinguished invitees, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, I would like to thank CMA for giving me this opportunity to speak on behalf of SAFA. So let me talk on 2 topics. One is to give a brief introduction to SAFA, and second, to identify some of the priority areas that SAFA is currently working. South Asian Federation of Accountants is a network partner of International Federation of Accountants. International Federation of Accountants is the apex body representing all the professional accountancy organizations in the world, covering almost 3 million accountants. And so we serve, namely, members of the SAFA are India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, Nepal, Maldives, and Afghanistan. Bhutan, where no accountancy body has been given observer status. SAFA has undertaken the leadership role and providing direction to the professionals in the region, and that covers around 475,000 professional accountants in South Asian region. I think Professor mentioned 2 milestones. One is 65th anniversary of CA Sri Lanka and 25th anniversary of CMA. I think he forgot to mention 40th anniversary of SAFA. So to this year, 40th anniversary of SAFA, we are celebrating, and it's a privilege to speak at this event with Professor Lakshmana Watawala in the audience, who is actually a founding member of the SAFA, and he was a past president as well. So I think he deserves a big round of applause for his dedication towards regional professional development, not only in the country. So I want to express my appreciation in addition to all the other original members who had the foresight to create this institute with effective professional body that contributes to our region. Let us also remember Mr. Hennayak Bandara, a former president of SAFA, who is the current vice president of CMA Sri Lanka. So it's testament of SAFA impact that remains one of the active SAC affiliation, continuing its regional engagement 4 decades on. I think when you see SAC, even SAC is not active, but SAFA is still active even after 40 years from its inception. And we convene our board meetings quarterly. We were supposed to have the quarterly board meeting tomorrow and day after in Bangladesh, but due to this unfortunate incident, it was cancelled, and the current circumstances there are not allowing us to be in person. So I would like to express my hope for Bangladesh to quickly recover and overcome this period of turmoil and continue on their journey of growth. As the global landscape changes rapidly with technological and regulatory social shifts, SAFA faces critical moment to strengthen the accounting profession in the region. So SAFA recognized the need to adapt and refine its strategy to meet the emerging needs and its members and stakeholders. So with this ambition, SAFA recently embarked on a strategy development project, and we will be reviewing the first draft at the upcoming board meeting. So we have initiated several initiatives. Actually, there was a task force formulated, and they are going to present. So I am privy to some of the areas that we are going to work with, and those are aligned to International Federation of Accountants' main strategic plan. And SAFA activities are managed by 16 committees and 2 task forces. Those members of committees are selected by professional accountancy organizations in the region. So we have identified in our strategic plan 4 impact areas to extend our service, covering creation of robust profession to build, sustainable private and public sector organizations to build sustainable economies and grow the profession, in addition to engage other stakeholders in the region. So within those areas of impact, the following key areas are where SAFA is dedicating additional efforts and will continue to do so in the coming years, along with numerous other strategic priorities. First one I would like to touch is capacity enhancement of small and medium practitioners. In the region, as I mentioned, there are 475,000 members. Approximately 169,000 are in practice, representing about 35%. Balance 65% members in the region work as professional accountants in business or public sector. Out of this 69,000, India boasts the largest portion of practicing members at 39% within its 403,000 member base. Most active members serve as small-medium practitioners, which predominantly support small-medium enterprises. And to enhance the capacity of SMPs, several priority areas have been identified, and some of which I'm going to outline here. I think there is a learning for Sri Lanka as well, because if you take both CMA, CS Sri Lanka, our number of practicing members out of total member base, it's less than 10%, whereas other countries, India is 39%, Bangladesh 35%, many other countries it's about 10%. So we need to see whether it's due to economic reasons or whether it's due to some other reason that our members are not moving into the practice, whereas they become entrepreneurs and earn foreign revenue as well. So some of the activities that SMPs are currently working in other parts of the region, entering into BPO and KPO sector, because I know how India is aggressively working towards this. So they want to create, so we know top 5 in the international market, top 5 firms. So they are actually aiming to create similar organizations within India, and there are several initiatives carried out, and including some of the SMPs being amalgamated. So these are learnings for Sri Lanka as well, because we know that we need foreign exchange coming in. So SMPs and our talent is, as a chartered accountants and management accountants, are capable of catering to this industry. So formulating strategies to promote this integration of technology, optimize talent management, and broadening the scope of consultancy services is some of the activities that SMP task force, SMP committee is currently engaging, in addition to promoting KPO, BPO sector. Further, encourage the merging and networking of firms to promote an exchange of knowledge. We know that sometimes what we see is those members in practice are small 1 or 2 member partners. When you have 1 member or 2 members, there is so much of duplication of work. So that is why the merging is important to have a benefit of synergies and scale. And update the member bodies relating to quality and assurance, monitoring quality management. I think Professor also touched upon some of these areas. That is why even CS Sri Lanka is currently embarking on a journey to establish quality assurance boards to ensure that we have robust audit and assurance profession. The second point, in addition to growing SMP, is the robust, sustainable private and public sector organizations in South Asian region, and our contribution as a SAFA regional body. So here, enhancing transparency, accountability, and governance within the private sector by building capacity and advocating for best practices is utmost important regionally. This underlines the necessity to embrace and adhere to international reporting standards, international assurance standards, international ethical standards, and international sustainability standards. Furthermore, professional organizations in the region actively promote implementation of excellence in corporate governance among boards. So that's one way actually how bodies in region are working towards establishing this sustainable organizations in private sector. One is actually governance and related areas are promoted by chartered accountants and management accountants. This includes their role in overseeing financial sustainability reports, adopting integrated reporting, and supporting both internal and external assurance process, as well as emphasizing the improvement of quality, audit quality, and corporate governance to deter fraud. So that is relating to private sector. While understanding that majority of the private sector is making some progress, there is improvements to be made in the public sector. Corruption in the public sector is a complex issue influenced by various factors. It is important to note that corruption can exist in both public and private sectors, but the public sector often receives more attention for several reasons. So below are some of such common reasons. The power to make or influence significant decisions create opportunities for bribery and corruption. The second is weak oversight. Public sector entities may lack robust oversight mechanisms, making it easier for corrupt practices to go undetected. The other one is red tapes. Lengthy and complex bureaucratic procedures can create opportunities for corruption, as individuals may offer bribes to expedite process or circumvent obstacles. Low salaries and insufficient incentives is another reason, and political corruption, obviously, political interest superseding the national interest. So according to a report by International Federation of Accountants on public trust in tax, they have analyzed 14 non-G20 countries. The report highlights that the public trust in the tax system is lower when taxpayers perceive high level of corruption and diversion of public funds. I think this is the same sentiment when we speak to professionals and businesses, what we hear. It's more than that they are not willing to pay taxes. What the question is, what the usage of that tax. So this distrust undermines the effectiveness of the tax system and the overall financial ecosystem. The Corruption Perception Index by Transparency International ranks 180 countries and territories by their perceived level of public sector corruption. In 2023, only 3 countries in South Asia rank within the top 100 globally. Bhutan leads the way, securing 26th position, while India and Maldives share the 93rd position. The remaining countries in the region rank above the 100th place, highlighting the severity of the issue. So numerous proposals and solutions in this problem exist, and we hear it many times, such as adopting digital methods to decrease bureaucracy, enhancing traceability, implementing e-governance, reinforcing institutions and oversight, streamlining procedures, and boosting compensation. So accountant and professional accountancy organizations should consider their role in breaking this cycle, because there is a giver and taker. Finance professionals and professional accountancy organizations are pivotal in effecting change, and it is inevitable to question if these activities could occur without their awareness. Hence the reason for SAFA to introduce a separate committee on anti-money laundering as the first step. The Anti-Money Laundering Committee has undertaken several initiatives. One is relating to guidance and documents on customer due diligence for SAFA countries. Then there is a research that is being undertaken to conduct a comprehensive analysis of global anti-money laundering and counter-financing terrorism legislations and explorations of best practices in AML CFT compliance, and conducting regular awareness sessions and webinars are few of such activities. In addition, International Federation of Accountants recently published, which SAFA is also contemplating to adoption, an action plan to fight corruption, and they have identified 5 pillars. Below are key areas covered under those pillars. I am sharing this for the benefit of members here. First pillar is harnessing the full potential of education and professional development. That is basically initial professional development at the early stage of a student, inculcate these values relating to professional conduct and avoiding corruption. The second is supporting global standards. I think Professor also touched, I'm not going to talk about it. That is basically the accountant's role relating to reporting standard, assurance standard, ethical standards, sustainability standards, and education standard, deploying them and enhancing the capacities of private sector organizations and ensuring that everyone complies with such standards. Third is contribute to evidence-based policy making. I think Professor touched upon again relating to cost centers and identifying cost relating to the services that we get. So evidence-based policy making uses high-quality information to perform decisions. Our profession is about creating and verifying high-quality decision. and making useful information and making them available. So supporting transparency and enhancing accountability, those are some of the aspects when you have this evidence-based policymaking support that you can make. That's where actually public sector accounting standards comes into play, because when you don't have accrual accounting and accounting standard adapted, taking decisions based on available information versus optimum information, there is a compromise. So that is another area that relating to corruption that we need to work on. And CA Sri Lanka is actually considering adopting some of the public sector accounting standards through our public sector wing. Strengthening engagement and partnerships is another area, because professional accountant alone cannot fight this area. So we need to get collaboration and identify areas of opportunities to work together with other organizations, chambers, other professional bodies, lawyers, all these professional organizations. So that's another area that we have identified as a priority, and provide policy advocacy related roles. So SAFA currently is working on integrating the specified areas into terms of reference and taking it to the committee level for implementation. Some might say that we are straying from our main focus and entering into unfamiliar areas. But we have a public interest role, whether we want it or not. This role goes beyond accounting and covers many other fields. That is why accountants are trusted advisors in public practice or in business. We need to lead and find creative ways to deal with these areas to build trust. To achieve the desired outcome, we need more finance professionals who are members of professional accountancy organizations. In many cases, whether in the small medium sector or public sector, finance team members do not hold professional accountancy organization memberships. Membership in a professional accountancy organization ensures that individuals adhere to code of conduct. Additionally, they must comply with continuous professional development requirements established by international education standards. So if there is any violation of those codes, there is a disciplinary process established by professional accountancy organizations. Therefore, we encourage businesses and public sector to employ accountants who are professionally qualified and members of professional accountancy organizations. Sometimes you consider this as a cost, but the benefits you gain are much higher than the cost that you incur. However, in some instances, when a professional accountant is politically exposed person, these controls may not be effective, as political interest may supersede professional interest. In conclusion, as SAFA celebrates its 40th anniversary, we reflect on our journey and look forward to continuing our mission of advancing the accounting profession in South Asia. The challenges ahead are significant, but so far, similarly, there are opportunities as well. By embracing international standards, promoting professional ethics, and enhancing accounting skills, we are committed to building a robust profession that can drive sustainable growth in both the private and public sector. Our path forward requires collaboration, innovation, and steadfast dedication. As Nelson Mandela once said, it is always seems impossible until it's done. Together, we can navigate the complexities of the modern world and achieve this seemingly impossible, ensuring that SAFA remains a beacon of excellence in the region for many years to come. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Kurupu. We are appreciative of you outlining the opportunities to be found in integrating technology, offering consultancy, and creating synergies and scale, as well as the need for professional organizations such as CMA Sri Lanka to actively promote and advocate for governance and sustainability, as well as the reduction of red tape, inefficiency, and corruption, and of course, the methods of bringing that about that you mentioned. We are pleased now to have the keynote struck. And for that, we invite our keynote speaker, who has over 30 years of board experience in the not-for-profit, government, and regulatory sectors, as well as in professional law and accounting bodies, academia, and membership organizations. He is a John Curtin Distinguished Professor at Curtin University and is currently the chair of the academic board at Curtin University, as well as Professor of Taxation Law in the Curtin Law School. He is the author and co-author of numerous books, refereed articles, and national and international conference papers, and sits on the editorial board of several peer-reviewed journals, as well as being the editor-in-chief of several refereed journals. He is a fellow of CPA Australia and served as deputy president of CPA Australia for 3 years from October 2020, and has been the president and chair of the CPA board since the 1st of October 2023. He is also a fellow of the Australian Academy of Law, as well as being a chartered accountant, chartered tax advisor, and honorary life member of the Tax Institute. He is also a life member of the Australasian Tax Teachers Association and the Australasian Law Academics Association. He has been a registered tax agent for some 35 years and was appointed by the Assistant Treasurer as one of the inaugural members of the National Tax Practitioners Board. He has served as a member of the Board of Taxation Special Advisory Panel, the ATO's Public Advice Guidance Panel, and the Strategic Advisory Council of the Australian Council of Professions. He is also a member of the Tertiary Education and Quality Standards Agency Register of Experts and a member of the Australian Academic Integrity Network. Please welcome to the lectern now, Professor Dale Pinto.
Okay, thank you very much for that warm welcome. I'd like to begin by acknowledging the following people. Our chief guest, Dr. Nandalal Weerasinghe from the Sri Lankan Central Bank, the Governor. And I'm glad we share an Australian connection. Dr. Nandalal did his doctorate at the Australian National University. Professor Lakshman Watawalla, the National President of the Institute of Management Accountants of Sri Lanka, and again another Australian connection with an adjunct professor at Deakin University as well. Hashana Kurupu, the President of SAFA and CASL. My fellow board directors of CPA, Professor Ho Yi Ki, who you heard was responsible for me being here, so I thank him for that, and also Kaushika Jayalanth, who's with us in the audience, along with the CPA Australia team. Thank you for being here. Distinguished guests and delegates, it's wonderful to see you all here. Indeed, for me, it's a great honour to be with you here today for this conference. Now, as you've heard, my Australian connections, I've travelled from Perth in Western Australia, that's where I live, with my wife, who's a pharmacist, and my 2 children, who have pursued computer science. So they live in America. I studied in the law schools of the University of Sydney and also did my PhD in Melbourne. Now, in terms of my background, I'm born in South India, near Kerala, and my travels in this region always feel like I'm coming home, and it feels like I'm speaking to friends and relatives in the audience. Yet each experience and visit does bring new insights. And in fact, this is my first visit to Sri Lanka, and it's already reached an endearing connection with me. I've witnessed already the warm hospitality of its people, the vibrant culture, the breathtaking scenery, and the wonderful people. There's an inner spirit that I can feel, which is very palpable. So the rich history of this island has already left a lasting impression on me, and I will be back. I was telling my wife she's most envious that she's not here with me. Now, as mentioned, I was originally only going to talk about taxation policy and practice for navigating economic stability, consistent with your conference theme, but I reflected on this and thought it might be better for me to broaden the discussion to include some of the other issues affecting our profession. One reason for this is while taxation is thrilling for me, I realise it might have a more sleep-inducing effect on you, especially this early in the morning. But rest assured, I will cover how taxation policy can be used to achieve economic stability and growth towards the end of my address. So I'll build, as it were, as the crescendo to what I'm going to say. I just want to tell you a little bit about CPA Australia and its relationship with CMA here in Sri Lanka to start with. So many will be aware that CPA Australia is one of the world's largest professional accounting organisations. We've got a rich heritage that dates back some 137 years, and we have a global reach. We've got some 173,000 members now in over 100 countries, and we're very proud that more than a quarter of our members live and work outside Australia, including more than 2,100 in the wider South Asian region. Our network and influence continues to grow. Since we opened our office here in Colombo in June last year, our membership has grown to some 500 members locally, and we're very proud of the collaboration and association there. Both of our regions share mutual commitment to the growth of accounting and also to finance. And CPA Australia collaborates with local and international bodies like CMA Sri Lanka to represent the views and also the challenges and concerns of the profession to governments, regulators, standard setters, industries, academia, and of course the general public. And we've heard about the public interest in our previous speakers, and I think that's important never for us to lose sight of. We are indeed pleased to sign a new membership pathway agreement with CMA in April this year, and this agreement strengthens the ability of our two bodies to work together to provide high-quality education and build the technical capabilities and the contemporary and interdisciplinary skills that are critical for accountants today and into the future. It also provides an important pathway for members from both bodies to benefit from each other's designation and widen their networks. I now want to move to the role of the accountants globally and talk about some of the opportunities and also the challenges. So accountants and finance professionals remain, in my view, essential for the efficient operation of the economy across individuals, businesses, and also governments worldwide. What do? Accountants maintain financial integrity, transparency, and trust. And we've heard the importance of trust already. If you look at our crest, there's one word at the bottom of it, which is integrity. We are trusted advisors in the community, and we must never forget that. In today's challenging economic climate, accountants' roles are evolving from what many would call number crunchers to strategic partners who influence organisational success. They shape a company's strategic direction, engage in proactive risk management, and supportable business growth with their financial expertise. Indeed, the insights of accountants help businesses navigate economic uncertainties and make informed decisions and judgments to ensure long-term success. The profession is continually evolving to meet economic challenges, emphasising what I talked about earlier, interdisciplinary and contemporary skills. And as we've heard already, challenges persist, including a global shortage of skilled professionals, the need for continuous education and upskilling, and difficulties in attracting and retaining diverse talent to our profession. Technology, especially artificial intelligence or AI, is transforming traditional accounting by efficiently processing vast amounts of data, which also create new opportunities. Automation eliminates routine tasks, allowing accountants to focus on strategic roles like decision-making and providing expert advice and judgments. By handling the mundane tasks, automation enables accountants to engage in forensic work and collaborate with their clients both innovatively and strategically. So implementing automation streamlines tasks and highlights the importance of addressing data security challenges as the profession adapts and evolves. Indeed, accountants and finance professionals play a crucial role in combating cybersecurity concerns, which of course is one of the most significant risks to our industry and profession today. With financial data frequently targeted by hackers, securing sensitive information is essential. Increasing data breaches endanger businesses, individuals and governments alike, making robust cybersecurity measures a must. Accountants must implement advanced security protocols, educate on best practices, and maintain vigilance and ethical conduct to protect their profession's integrity. At CPA Australia, we prioritise upholding the highest levels of professional and ethical standards. And accountants ensure compliance with laws and regulations to prevent fraud and financial crisis exist. Failures in governance and accountability and culture can erode trust and integrity, which is, of course, the foundation of our profession. And amid high inflation and rising costs, companies rely on accountants to solve complex business problems. Their ability to provide sound financial advice and innovative solutions makes them highly valuable to employers, clients, the government, and the broader community in which they serve. The modern accountant is an advisor and a business analyst using data analytics and advanced financial modelling to add value to businesses. This evolution highlights the increasing importance of accountants in driving business performance and economic growth. ESG issues are crucial, and accountants are well placed to provide holistic thinking, judgment, and rigour to sustainability practices. They ensure that businesses comply with regulatory requirements and adopt practices promoting long-term sustainability. Accountants help organisations manage ESG risks and opportunities, integrating these factors into the overall business strategy. Industry experts, policymakers, and thought leaders alike must tackle critical ESG issues. And accountants have the skills to lead these efforts and drive meaningful change within their organisations and beyond. Now, globally, ESG and sustainability are, of course, vital for long-term business resilience to help attract investment and build stakeholder trust by addressing environmental impacts, social responsibility, and governance. In Sri Lanka, like many other regions, climate change significantly impacts sectors, causing erratic weather affecting tea production and rising sea levels threatening marine biodiversity and fisheries, to give but two examples. So adopting sustainable practices is crucial to protect these industries and ensure the long-term economic and environmental sustainability. Worldwide, consumers and investors increasingly scrutinise companies' ESG performance, believing those with high ESG standards are less risky, better positioned for growth, and better prepared for uncertainty. Accountants are skilled at responding to uncertainty, being detail-oriented, organised, collaborative, and accountable. A sustainable business is a good business. Effective management enables organisations to build a sustainable future for people, communities, and the planet. Last year, the International Sustainability Standards Board, ISSB, announced 2 standards providing a global baseline for sustainable reporting. CPA Australia believes these standards will drive positive change, and all public companies will need to review their governance strategy, risk management, systems and reporting mechanisms to align to these new standards. On to integrated reporting. Globally, investors and regulators are increasingly focusing on ESG performance, its reporting, and the assurance of sustainability reports. Again, accountants with their holistic thinking and professional judgment are key to supporting organisations in their transition to a sustainable future. CPA Australia is a staunch advocate of integrated reporting, which provides a comprehensive view of how businesses generate value over time, and we fully embrace ESG metric reporting. We're very proud that our 2023 integrated report, Transforming for the Future, was a finalist at the 2024 Australasian Reporting Awards. I'd like to speak very briefly about the 15th annual CPA Australia Asia Pacific Small Business Survey, and then I am going to come to tax. So this survey, which tracks small business issues and sentiment in the Asia Pacific region, showed that small businesses from emerging markets are much more likely to be innovative and thriving. Of the 11 regions and thousands of businesses surveyed, what is clear is that innovative companies leverage technology. Conversely, a lack of innovation by small businesses hampers economic growth and productivity. So what is clear as accountants and as finance business professionals is that we must continue to encourage businesses to embrace new tools and ways of doing business such as ESG. These are fundamental to improving business performance, which in turn contributes to economic growth, new jobs, and also wealth creation. Okay, now turning to taxation, which I know is everyone's favourite topic. So I'll start with a quote. You might have heard this, the phrase, "Taxation is the price we pay for a civilised society," is commonly attributed to the US jurisprudential scholar Justice Oliver Wendell Holmes Jr. We heard earlier today the phrase of societal costing by Professor Watawalla, and this is an example of that. What this quote encapsulates is the idea that taxation is necessary to fund the services and infrastructure that support a functioning and orderly society. How much a country needs is often conceptualised in terms of the percentage of tax as a proportion of the country's GDP. So to give you some baselines, the OECD average, these are the latest figures I could get, is about 34% of GDP, which is quite high. In Australia, we are sitting just under 30%, 29.5%. And the figures I have from Sri Lanka, and forgive me if these aren't totally correct, in December 2023, I have 10.8, and back from there in March 2022 was 6.7, and 15.2 in December 2015. So that then raises the question of whatever your level ends up being, and that's a decision for the government of the country, you have to find a way or ways of raising that revenue from the community. So that brings me to my next quote, which is this time from Jean-Baptiste Colbert, who was the French Minister of Finance under King Louis XIV. And he famously said, "The art of taxation consists in so plucking the goose as to obtain the largest possible amount of feathers using the smallest amount of hissing." The largest amount of feathers with the smallest amount of hissing. And of course, what this metaphor conveys to us is the goal of taxation should be to extract as much revenue as possible without causing too much discomfort or disruption or protest from the tax-paying community. So what does a well-designed tax system look like? It's actually quite simple, and words like fair, you've probably heard in the media, everyone should pay their fair share of tax. So a well-designed system should be fair and it should be efficient. So it should allocate resources in the economy efficiently. And it should be able to meet the revenue needs of the government to support its economic and social goals. There are 5 accepted principles of a good tax, and I want to just briefly share these with you because it does emphasise the important pillars of what a good tax system is built on. And the first one is simplicity. So tax system should be easy to understand and administer. If a tax system is too complex, what happens? You get confusion, you have increased compliance costs, and you have more opportunities for avoidance and evasion. So simplicity must always be a goal. The next one is equity. The burden should be shared fairly amongst taxpayers. And there are 2 concepts of equity here. The first is horizontal equity, which means taxpayers with similar abilities to pay should pay similar amounts. And vertical equity, taxpayers with greater abilities to pay should contribute more. The next principle is certainty, and this applies particularly in the business community, where businesses should be able to predict what their tax burdens are with reasonable accuracy so they can make investment decisions. The 4th principle aligned to it is the principle of neutrality, that taxes should not distort economic or investment decisions, that those decisions should be made independently of taxation considerations. And the final one, which is really important, is efficiency. And efficiency, again, from the government's point of view, means the cost to collect a tax should obviously be less than the revenue that the tax generates. And from a taxpayer's point of view, the costs to comply should be low. Now, all of this is very good. It's conceptual, it's theoretical, but the real linchpin of the success is in compliance. Effective compliance with tax laws is important. How do we achieve this? Education is critical, so taxpayers need to know and understand what their obligations are. That helps to ensure voluntary compliance, which in turn ensures fairness and equity, so everyone pays their fair share, and mechanisms and programs to reduce evasion and avoidance must also be in place. So in Australia, we have publicised compliance programs around targeted areas. We have benchmarks, and if you depart from the benchmark, then you have to explain yourself to the Revenue Authority. So what I'd like to do is turn that theoretical construct into some practical observations on how a country or jurisdiction can actually put into effect, because we heard earlier you need to put these things into practical effect. So I'm just going to cover 4 things briefly and then I will conclude. So the first one is the tax system can certainly be used to help promote investments and savings. So it can do this through investment incentives, for example, in areas like research and development to encourage innovation. It can similarly do it to encourage people to save. The second one is taxation can be used to enhance economic stability. Ideals of progressive taxation, I talked about the more you earn, the more you pay, is an example of that. And counter-cyclical policies, so cutting taxes during downturns to help people with cost of living pressures, and conversely, when things are good. So I'm in a mining town, so there's lots of money, so we can increase royalties. The third one, supporting innovation and entrepreneurship. And this is really important in the new knowledge economy that we're at. In Australia, 80% of our economy and 90% of people work in the services industry. So these incentives for research and development and startup incentives are critical. And finally, improving public services and infrastructure is also very important, including allocating revenues to public services and infrastructure to enhance the business environment in which we operate. So my conclusion for all of that from tax is obviously the tax policies are vital for navigating economic stability and also for promoting growth. And by encouraging investment, savings and innovation while ensuring an equitable resource distribution and allocation and supporting public infrastructure, tax policies can and should create a robust foundation for sustainable economic development. Balancing these elements requires careful policy design by governments and ongoing adjustments and refinements to respond to changing economic conditions. So in conclusion, I'll finish where I started. Accountants are strategic business partners, trusted advisors, and thought leaders who enhance business decision-making processes. Taxation policies are crucial for ensuring economic stability and promoting growth, and accountants play a pivotal role in influencing business performance and driving discussions on emerging financial trends, ESG, and emerging technologies. Accurate reporting and auditing of financial and climate-related disclosures by accountants are critical to capital market efficiency, ensuring stability and boosting investor confidence. And by upholding the highest ethical and professional standards, which is the cornerstone of our profession, and being partners for progress, accountants will, in my view, remain indispensable to the global future economy. Thank you again for inviting me this morning. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor. We are grateful, and we appreciate your outlining of the accountant's role as trusted advisors in the community, strategic partners, and the transformation of the role to tackle the challenges of maintaining security, skills, and standards, and of course, embrace the opportunities. Now, as we follow your advice and all the speakers' calls to action, we hope for minimal hissing and a whole pile of feathers for a softer future. Our next speaker, our chief guest, has been and done many things, but by his specific request, he has asked that we introduce him with one line only. And so we welcome to the lectern Dr. Nandalal Veerasinghe, the 17th Governor of the Central Bank of Sri Lanka.
Good morning. First of all, thank you very much for Professor Wattawala for inviting me to deliver a speech as a chief guest here. Indeed, it is Professor Pinto and council members, distinguished invitees, and members. It obviously gives me great pleasure to address you all today at the CMA Sri Lanka National Management Accounts Conference on a timely topic that we are seeing here, navigating stability towards dynamic growth. I think it's quite important topic, and very, I would say, I must thank organizers for selecting the theme, which is very relevant and timely. And also I see the theme would more relevant to not so to economists, the accounting professional, more to the economists, I think, because we looking at the current status. That's why I think we heard enough from the professionals and what are their practices. And obviously, I really enjoy the Professor Pinto's taxation part. Obviously, I must also say my connection to Australia have been recently meeting several Australian kind of engagement 2 weeks ago, I met former Governor Philip Lowe in Mongolia. And the last week, former Prime Minister Scott Morrison was here. So I had a bilateral and good engagement. And then happy to meet distinguished profession from Australia, Professor Pinto, and also enjoy the theme on taxation is very, very relevant and timely. So I'm not going to talk about that part. This is obviously the fiscal policy, Minister of Finance, the Parliament, we all know that. So my basically thinking about just to share some of the ideas relating to the stability towards dynamic growth. I think that is because of the theme. I thought I will focus in that area. First of all, I'd like to outline why the stability is critical for achieving what we call dynamic growth, and how our recent experiences illustrate this essential relationship with stability towards the dynamic economic growth. Stability encompasses macroeconomic stability, including low and stable inflation, a stable financial system, resilient external sector, and fiscal discipline. These are the 5 key areas for which we have, at the central bank, monetary authority of the country, we have an important responsibility when it comes to low and stable inflation, stable financial system, and resilient external sector. And of course, fiscal discipline and taxation is by the authorities and government and the Minister of Finance and the Parliament. I will touch more on the central bank's side and our responsibilities. Creating a stable economic environment is a prerequisite for fostering long-term economic growth, and it emphasizes the need for balanced and strategic economic policies that ensure stability while promoting factors that drive growth, such as investment, innovation, and structural reforms. No country has achieved sustained growth in the absence of macroeconomic stability. Sri Lankans have experienced the devastating implications of macroeconomic instability in the wake of economic crisis, which we experienced, a worst economic crisis which we experienced in the history in 2022. Since then, policies were directed to restore stability as a priority, as a top priority. Consequently, 2 years from the crisis, we are able to gather here to discuss about the dynamic growth. So let me briefly reflect on our journey towards the stability. As you all know, in 2022, we faced a severe economic crisis with very high inflation, excessive balance of payment pressures, with the acute shortage of foreign exchange liquidity, significant fiscal imbalances, heightened socio-economic and socio-political tensions, and the very distressed financial sector. However, prompt and coordinated implementation of a suite of policy measures by the government and the central bank, and the structural reform agenda committed by the government, supported by the International Monetary Fund under the Exchange Fund Facility, reinforced overall macroeconomic stability. Subsequently, the recovery from the economic crisis was buttressed by rapid disinflation, improved external resilience, stronger fiscal balances, but still not enough, and preserved financial system stability. So that's where we are now, but still there is a long way to go. In turn, the economy now moving to a recovery path has culminated in Sri Lanka, breaking the streak of 6 consecutive quarters of contraction from 2022 onwards. In the second half of 2023, further to 5.3% growth recorded in the first quarter of 2024. I'm sure second quarter is also will follow similar trend. Leading indicators point to the continuation of this growth momentum during the remainder of the full year, leading to a full growth of almost, we are hoping, close to 4% of year-on-year positive growth after a couple of years of negative contraction of the economy. So let me just briefly touch on our responsibilities, which restoring price stability, one of the things, and building external buffers. Those are the issues that we're facing. The inflation, which had peaked all-time high in September 2020, we all don't talk too much about it, recovered to single-digit levels within a year, 12 months period, as a result of very sharp monetary tightening regime, and the reissue target level by end 2023 within 12 months. With inflation expectations remain very well anchored, currently inflation is soaring at lower single digits. So basically this is where we have several quarters of inflation running around 1 to 2%. Compared to our target, commitment with the government and inflation targeting regime is 5%. But what has seen inflation expectations has now been very well anchored, even much below our inflation target. That's why when you see recently, when the headline inflation, national consumer price inflation, increased to 1 to 2%, as seen the reporting, accelerated of inflation from 1 to 2%, despite our target range is 5%. It's like what is happening in the other part of the advanced countries where inflation target is 2%. Inflation was running as 5%. And when inflation was, say, 0 to 1%, is not the accelerated inflation. It's still below and underperforming. And this is one of the issues we are facing now. Because of the commitment to maintain single digit with a range, we are breaching the low band of the inflation for a long period, then we have to report to the parliament and also have consultation with the IMF with our commitment to maintain inflation within the band. We are basically moving below the bands. That's where I think we have to understand this is not an inflation regime. Still, we are moving well below the inflation that we are target, even below the lower band for a longer period. This is one of the reasons today we announced another monetary policy easing measure which enable us to cut policy rates by another 25%. So we are in the path of the monetary policy easing, and we hope that we still have a space going forward, but in carefully and closely monitoring and evidence-based monetary policy under inflation targeting regime. That's what we have. In fact, the significant milestone in the monetary policy implementation was the enactment of the new Central Bank Act last year, which increased the autonomy of central bank and enhanced accountability for our policies. The independence of the central bank has been reinforced by limiting what we call monetary financing, which is something related to taxation, where when government wouldn't have sufficient taxation, then government used to basically tendency to increase monetary financing to breach a gap, but it's no longer visible. Then also eliminating government representations in the decision making, thereby strengthening monetary policy formulation, the governance and the accountability of monetary policy. That's the important one. And also in addition, we have the formally recognized flexible inflation targeting regime as a monetary policy framework, which is most successful, best monetary policy implementation framework that we have seen in practice in a lot of countries, including pioneered by New Zealand and then Australia, Canada, UK, and also emerging market countries like Thailand, Philippines, Indonesia, all these countries now moving towards. We have also now established a very strong monetary policy framework with accountability, credibility, and also with regaining the anchoring inflation expectations. The external sector, on the something related to monetary policy, is also the management of the exchange rate under flexible exchange rate regime, under which we have shown its resilience with the stability now have been to a certain extent restored in 2023 on the back of improved foreign exchange inflows and the reserves through various means, recovering of the exports, remittances, tourism in the service account, and also the balancing the trade account due to some of the measures, obviously import restriction, but that's gradually being relaxed. And this, as mentioned already, someone earlier mentioned, the current account surplus first time for a long period, was recorded in 2023, and it will be again second year in 2024. With that, we have been gradually increasing our external buffers in terms of resource by about 5.6 billion. It's not very large, but still, coming from where we were in the crisis, we are basically making good progress, especially under the reform program and stabilization program. And also, a small comment on the exchange rate management. And because we, Sri Lanka, used to have a kind of a exchange rate regime where central bank was trying to manage the control the exchange rate, but now current regime is a flexible inflation targeting regime, where the exchange rate is determined through the market, demand and supply, and also inconsistent with overall macro fundamentals. So under this inflation targeting framework, we are seeing the relative stability compared to the huge volatility we had, and as a result, there is some appreciation last year and this year, and we are seeing a gradual movement, and also we are building up buffers in terms of reserves. Going forward, the central bank remains committed to maintaining a market-determined and flexible exchange rate that can serve as a buffer against external shocks. That's we need to understand the role of the exchange rate is to create a buffer against external shocks. If there is a unexpected shock, exchange rate will have to reflect the shocks. So there's a kind of shock absorber in terms of flexible inflation targeting regime. This approach is expected to help correct what we call anti-export bias that was seen in the past and undue speculation and volatility. So that's the very clear, transparent framework on the monetary policy and exchange rate management. So I also have a few points on the revenue-based fiscal consolidation. I don't want to discuss too details because there's a good policy discussion we already heard. The taxation side, all I can say that we are well aware of the revenue-focused fiscal consolidation part that the government has undertaken to reinstate fiscal sector sustainability. As we right now we heard what are the relevant tax to GDP ratios which is needed for a country like us. Obviously, 29%, 30% OECD countries, Australia, they are well below. They are trying to reach 15% of GDP compared to where we are now. It's still a difficult process. We have recognized the role played by the government, Minister of Finance, and also the Parliament in implementing very difficult fiscal and taxation reforms, expenditure, fiscal rules, and next important one is the Public Financial Management Bill that will be passed by the Parliament in the near future. That basically specifies binding fiscal rules in the form of primary expenditure ceiling, primary balance target, and government debt target, paving the way for better macroeconomic management in terms of fiscal discipline. And also the important reform that already passed by the Parliament was a public debt management law, which was the responsibility of central bank earlier. Now it's expected to, new law is expected to establish a new debt management office. It will amalgamate current debt management functions of the central bank and the Minister of Finance, assuring prudent debt management and address through an independent central authority, address the conflict of interest central bank is having in managing public debt. So that part also now has addressed. It's a institutional establishment institution is in the process. Within about 12 to 18 months, that authority will be established. With that, that will ensure, with the Public Financial Management Bill, will ensure medium to long-term fiscal sustainability and the credible path of fiscal going forward on a sustainable basis, irrespective of any administration going forward. Let me briefly touch on our other responsibility, which is to ensure financial system stability. As you know, all Sri Lanka central bank is entrusted with the maintaining financial system stability. We don't have a separate authority like FSA in Australia, New Zealand, or like some other countries. Central bank prides itself on ensuring financial stability, even in the midst of the crisis. We all know bankers, the difficulties bank system stability, financial system were facing in 2022, first during the liquidity issues, and then the capital and the asset quality issues, that we have been able to come out and maintain the stability, and our sector, financial sector, demonstrated its resilience, stemming from proactive and prudent policies and greater preparedness for the crisis in an event. So we are now have all the mechanism in place. Amidst challenges, the banking sector, which dominates the financial sector in Sri Lanka, was able to maintain stability by preserving capital adequacy levels, supported by the decline in risk-weighted assets, while liquidity was maintained above the regulatory minimum. That now is liquidity is not an issue. Central Bank continue to engage in activities relating to financial inclusion, which is a new mandate under the new Act. Financial inclusion is also given to the Central Bank. Financial consumer protection and ensuring the provisioning of robust financial infrastructure, such as payment and settlement infrastructure, for the smooth functioning of the finance sector. Those are also our responsibilities. The resilience of the financial sector is expected to improve further with the dissipation of macroeconomic vulnerabilities in the period ahead. With the easy monetary conditions, as reflected through downward interest rate movements that we have seen from the sharp increase we have seen in the last 2 years, and dissipating the uncertainty pricing interest rates, credit to the private sector is expected to rebound in 2024 from the contraction that we have seen in the last 2 years. Banks are expected to rebalance the asset allocation with the normalizing yield curves on government securities, which were once inverted, and the correction of the anomaly in the risk-free rates being higher than the lending rates. So that was anomaly being now adjusted. The envisaged credit growth that is necessary for the dynamic intermediate to long-term growth, and the gradual easing of trade-related restrictions and improving repayment capacities are expected to improve the credit quality of the banking sector further going forward. A robust growth in digital transactions as another area of improving efficiency of the finance sector, that is expected in the landscape of payment and settlements due to the increased transaction through instant payment facilitated by online banking and mobile payment applications. That we also encourage the adoption of and promotion of digitalization, especially in the financial sector. Awareness campaigns on digital transaction methods will be conducted to increase the uptake of digital payments by customers and merchants. So that will also help on the other side taxation. The digitalization is one of the ways to improve taxation. Central Bank will closely collaborate with financial institutions to support the expansion of safe, efficient and reliable digital payment mechanisms in the country. How digitalization can help and technology can help taxation, I can share one small experience while in Australia. Short period, I was also a taxpayer there. And it was, how efficient and easy for me to file a tax return and get a refund within 2 weeks period, and without any interaction from anyone. I never get to know whom with I interact, and it's only the system. That's a very, very efficient system, and I'm sure you have much more expertise how this has been developed for a long period. I think that is where we think. Very minimal fee for a new person who went into taxation in Australia. The minimal fee from a tax consultant, even without that, one can do quite easily individual taxation. And it's a very efficient system. I hope that you can share some of the experiences in your with your great exposure to this sector, this technology and the digital means of, and obviously that will be a challenge for the accounting professionals in Sri Lanka. I know largely they depend on the taxation. All this auditing and taxation is a big industry here. Then let me touch briefly on the IMF External Fund Facility Program and the debt restructuring. The Sri Lanka's strong performance under the IMF EFA program was also been instrumental in restoring macroeconomic stability and it has complemented the external debt restructuring process. So in June this year, 2024, Executive Board completed the Article 4 consultation and the second review, the third disbursement happened, and then brought that almost $1 billion from the IMF. Financing is not the important one, but the successful progress, the continuous progress made under the program is the most important. In terms of debt restructuring, domestic debt restructuring, we all know, you all were involved, especially CS Sri Lanka, I have to thank them for their role that they played, helping, giving guidance as the regulator of the Chartered Institute, completed last year. Then this year, June, Sri Lanka and members of the Official Credit Committee formalized the treatment terms in a MOU, following which Sri Lanka is currently engaging and already signed. All the members of the FARIS Club have signed the MOU, now it's complete, and also we have also signed MOU with Exim Bank of China parallelly with as non-OCC members. That part has been completed, and also by early July 2024, we also, following some negotiations, the steering committee of the ad hoc group for bondholders, who represent more than 50% of Sri Lankan bonds globally, and we agreed co-financial terms of restructuring of the ISPs, embodied in what you call joint working framework, that has been now submitted to the Secretary of the Official Credit Committee. They would assess these terms for comparability of treatment, that we had ensured any debt treatment or relief should be comparable across the creditors. That test now is being done by the OCC, while the IMF also would confirm the consistency of the parameters under the debt sustainability analysis of the IMF. These are the necessary processes that we have to go through, that we are in that process. The successful completion of external debt restructuring in the near term and continuous commitment to implement reforms under the IMF EFA program for next up to 2027 will help eliminate the lingering uncertainties while improving investor confidence in a sustained manner. The successful conclusion of debt restructuring would help improving the country out of what they call restricted default status by the sovereign rating agencies right now. Selective default or excessive default, that category, and come out this category soon after we complete the debt restructuring process, which will bring many tangible benefits to the country, and this is the next important step moving towards the growth agenda, to the dynamic growth from the stability. Let me make few points on the structural reform. That's also one important area for us to complete and move into a dynamic growth. First one, stability, both monetary policy, fiscal policy, financial system stability. Then next important one is for any dynamic growth, we need to have a important medium to long-term structural reforms. The recent crisis is also a result of several structural weaknesses. Some of them already discussed by previous speakers in several ways, anti-corruption measures, doing business, all these things, that these weaknesses have persisted in the Sri Lankan economy over many decades. Those are not issues that we have seen in the recent past. It has been over many decades. The ongoing reform agenda comprises measures that are expected to augment the resilience of the economy through these reforms, thereby ensuring a positive and sustained growth trajectory. That is what we call dynamic growth trajectory. In addition to fiscal consolidation, the reform centers around few areas: social safety net, fiscal institutions, that is what public finance management is all about, the state-owned enterprises, addressing corruption and corruption vulnerabilities, and raising potential growth, for example, are imperative to building a strong and resilient macroeconomic foundation for dynamic growth in the future. Another important area in the structural reforms is addressing corruption vulnerabilities, already talked about, and the government is also in the process of strengthening the legislative framework in relation to governance. The Anti-Corruption Act has been approved by the Parliament in August 2023 with the aim of aligning Sri Lanka's anti-corruption laws and practices with internationally recognized norms, standards and best practices. Now it's up to the implementation of these institutional reforms. The government has prepared an action plan to implement the recommendations outlined in what we call governance diagnostic assessment that was independently done by the IMF in 2023. Based on the recommendations, now there's a roadmap has already been announced how to implement those, address those weaknesses and fill the gaps in the processes. Now, final comments on the growth, because we talking about the dynamic growth going forward. So given the necessity of fiscal consolidation to ensure that sustainability, the major growth driver should be in the private sector in the period ahead. We can't have no longer public sector driven growth that we had in the past with huge fiscal imbalances and high debt, high sovereign debt. However, the government has a key role in nurturing the private sector growth through the implementation of long overdue, as I said earlier, structural reforms in factor markets, state-owned business enterprises, and the public sector service delivery. So government has a role to address all this area, especially labor market, the land market, and also the productivity and human capital markets, and also state-owned businesses and public sector service delivery with very large public sector. That's also very important. Mitigating recurring external sector imbalance, that is other part. We have to play a role as central bank, and their sustainability concerns could be addressed through well-coordinated policy planning and implementation to expand diversity and position of both merchandise exports and services, export of goods and services, increasing what we call non-debt creating forex inflows, such as foreign remittance for investment to tradable sectors, and also enhancing foreign exchange earnings. The third issue that I like to touch on is related to land ownerships, and other one is low female labor force participation that has been inherent issue in Sri Lanka, and skills mismatch in the labor market. This is one of the role that you institutions are playing to provide sufficient skills into the emerging sectors. Obstacles faced by micro, small and medium enterprises in accessing credit markets, access to credit and financial literacy and financial education are few important sector reforms that are imperative to harness the available resources to bring the economy into a high dynamic trajectory. Because we know we are not in an advantage position in terms of demography. We need to use our labor force, skill up, and get the unutilized female labor force into the workforce and improve the productivity of the labor force through skills and technology. Otherwise, we are not in a country which has abundant labor, especially with the demographic changes for next several years. Then another important area is to transform loss-making state-owned enterprises. This is also a very important area to make the state-owned enterprises into productive and market-oriented institutions that we talk about cost recovery pricing. This is crucial to reduce the burden on government budget and release resources in the banking sector. We know there are huge exposures to banking sector by state-owned enterprises. To release those resources from the state-owned enterprises exposures to the private sector, and also to productive sectors in the economy, rather than lending to loss-making state-owned enterprises to meet their liquidity requirements. So that's, I think, there are a lot of reforms that have been already done. We are moving towards the right path there. While divesting non-strategic investment, this is a very kind of a debated topic in Sri Lanka. Divestment means someone is investing in state-owned enterprises. Investment does not mean the selling off and taking the profit institution somewhere else. It's all about putting new money and having change in share ownership, either the private or public, and put more money, make institution more efficient, and provide public support services to the public in a much more competitive manner. That we need to understand what is the divestment of external enterprises means much more efficient economy. The government should intervene in the markets only to address market failures and to ensure proper regulations of markets if required, not to do business through the state-owned enterprises. Further improving the doing business environment is another important long-term reforms through efficient public sector service delivery, I already mentioned, reduction in corruption, ensuring property rights, and minimizing bureaucratic red tapes is essential to foster conducive environment for the economy to thrive. Then obviously attracting foreign direct investment will be crucial for sustaining growth. That's already talked about it. As the investor confidence improves, consequent to debt occurring, maintenance of a business-friendly policy framework with persistent improvements to the doing business environment is essential to attract investments to the potential sectors such as ports, energy, tourism, and other sectors that we see a huge potential in Sri Lanka. And obviously, from our side, the low interest rate environment, which is currently in place in line with our inflation target, and this help obviously address the other uncertainties in terms of low and stable inflation. The industrial sector has to leverage this low interest and low inflation environment to transform itself into high value added, one by moving away from traditional and simple products to more complex, yet competitive and high quality product. That is the future for us to prosper, to earn more foreign exchange through industrialization. Another important area that I want to touch is ongoing transformation, which is long overdue, is the digitalization drive. We have a program called Digi-Econ 2030 program of the government, which seeks to accelerate Sri Lanka's transformation into a digital economy. It will help consolidate Sri Lanka's efforts towards sustained and inclusive growth, and of course the progression towards the middle income status. Digitalization is a must. So finally, in conclusion, going forward, it's important for all stakeholders, all of you professionals and all of us bureaucrats, officials and public service, as well as the private sector, government, the private sector and even households to remain committed to the reform path. That's very important. The reform path is quite important. We need to move in the same direction without deviating from that, and that could result in a worse situation. And ensure that long-term, long overdue reforms are expeditiously implemented and supported by the people in this country to set the economy on track towards sustained, inclusive and sustainable growth. In today's rapidly evolving economic landscape, the pursuit of dynamic growth while maintaining stability is more challenging and more critical than ever. I hope this conference will provide a platform. I've seen the very useful discussions in the technical sessions. We'll provide a platform to discuss the policy responses and debate about all these things, have a better understanding about all these things, both in retrospect and in a forward-looking approach, and insight into how best the economy could be navigated towards greater stability and dynamic growth. Thank you very much.
Let me now express our gratitude for sharing the progress we've made towards stability as a nation, and also the effort and reforms that made that possible, as well as the prospects for future growth. We've heard from our speakers the importance of skilled talent to embrace the opportunities and overcome challenges. This makes recognizing the contribution of professionals who've offered their skills in serving the public interest that much more vital. This brings us to the CMA Business Excellence Awards. As presenters, we invite Professor Lakshmana Vatavalla, the founder president, CMA Sri Lanka, in the company of our chief guest, Dr. Nandalal Veerasinghe, our keynote speaker, Professor Dale Pinto, and our guest of honor, Mr. Heshana Kuruppu. We also have our vice president of CMA Sri Lanka, Mr. Hennayaka Bandara, on stage. Our first recipient of the Business Excellence Award for 2024 is a senior banker who has served the commercial bank throughout his working career, holding a number of senior positions. He was appointed as Managing Director of the Commercial Development Company plc on the 12th of May 2022. He's a Fellow of the Chartered Institute of Management Accountants, UK, and has obtained a Master of Business Administration degree from the University of Sri Jayewardenepura. He is also a fellow member of the Institute of Bankers Sri Lanka, a fellow of the Institute of Certified Management Accountants of Sri Lanka, and a fellow of the Chartered Management Institute UK. He is also a member of the Sri Lanka Institute of Directors since August 2017. He currently serves as the Managing Director and CEO of Commercial Bank of Ceylon plc since May 2022, and has been functioning as a director of Commercial Bank of Maldives Private Limited, a subsidiary of Commercial Bank of Ceylon plc since 2016. Receiving the CMA Business Excellence Award, Mr. Sanath Manathunga. Our next recipient is no stranger. He is the president of the Institute of Chartered Accountants of Sri Lanka. He also serves as the president of the South Asian Federation of Accountants. He has served as the vice president of SAFA in the year 2023 and the chairman of the Committee for Improvement in Transparency, Accountability and Governance Committee of SAFA in 2020-2021. He embarked on his career at KPMG before joining First Capital Group, as you've heard, where he held the position of Group CFO. Subsequently, he joined MAS Group, giving nearly 10 years to that organization, 6 of which were as general manager. Currently, he holds the role of Group Finance Director at David Pieris Group of Companies and serves as a board member for several of the group's subsidiaries. He's a fellow member of CA Sri Lanka and graduated with a first-class Bachelor of Science degree in Accountancy Special from the University of Sri Jayewardenepura, Department of Accountancy and Financial Management. He continued his pursuit of knowledge by earning an MBA from the Postgraduate Institute of Management and a Master's in Financial Economics from the University of Colombo. We now have a very interesting presentation because that goes to Mr. Heishina Kurupur, receiving the CMA Business Excellence Award. Our next recipient is a senior lecturer of the University of Sri Jayewardenepura, specializing in the field of accounting. He's a member of both the Institute of Certified Management Accountants of Sri Lanka and the Chartered Institute of Management Accounting UK. He earned his doctorate in corporate sustainability and sustainability accounting from Griffith University, Australia. He also holds an MBA from the Postgraduate Institute of Management and a business administration degree from the University of Sri Jayewardenepura. He also has an extensive publication history. With his experience in corporate sustainability, sustainability accounting and reporting, as well as integrated reporting, he is highly sought after as a speaker. He has presented papers in many countries, including Finland, Australia, Germany, and South Korea. He serves as a committee member of the Environmental and Sustainability Management Accounting Network, Asia Pacific, and the country representative of the Sri Lanka chapter of that organization. He's been awarded grants from the Chartered Institute of Management Accountants, the Ministry of Environment, Griffith Asia Institute, National Science Foundation, the University of Sri Jayewardenepura, and the World Bank to support and continue his research activities. His contributions to the field of sustainability accounting have been widely recognized through numerous international and national awards for research excellence. Congratulations to Dr. Nuan Gunaratne. Our next winner of the Business Excellence Awards is a fellow member of the Institute of Chartered Accountants, Certified Management Accountants, Certified Professional Managers, AAT and ACCA. Currently, he is a council member of CMA Sri Lanka, and he is the chairman of Sanasa Life Insurance PLC. Warm congratulations to Mr. Puvendran Gajendra. Our next recipient is a distinguished finance professional and a senior chartered accountant with several decades of exceptional service. As a fellow member of both the Institute of Chartered Accountants of Sri Lanka and the Institute of Certified Management Accountants of Sri Lanka, he has demonstrated unparalleled expertise and commitment to his field. Currently, he serves as a senior consultant at Lake House Printers and Publishers and the former director at the same company for over 2 decades. Additionally, he is a senior director at Vijay Newspapers Limited and director at LH Plantations Limited. Congratulations, recipient of the Business Excellence Award, Mr. D.V. Gunathunga. Our next awardee is a principal of the Tax and Regulatory Division of KPMG in Sri Lanka. He has over a decade of experience in the areas of tax and regulatory services. He holds a Bachelor of Laws degree from the Faculty of Law, University of Colombo, and is an attorney at law in the Supreme Court of Sri Lanka. He is a fellow member of the Chartered Institute of Management Accountants, a Chartered Global Management Accountant, and an associate member of the Institute of Certified Management Accountants for Sri Lanka. He is an executive committee member of the CMA Board of Sri Lanka, member of the KPMG Middle East and South Asia Tax Steering Committee, and an executive committee member of the Corporate Lawyers Association. He was also the former chairman of the Tax Committee of the Bar Association of Sri Lanka. Congratulations, Mr. Suresh Pereira. We ask that our presenters remain on stage because there is more appreciation to be done. We have those to thank who have been sponsors, and their generosity has enabled us to organize this event. You can see their names on the at the front of the hall as well. Our platinum sponsors for this event, for the CMA Conference 2024, Lanka IOC PLC. Collecting our token of appreciation will be Mr. Deepak Das, Managing Director. From our next platinum sponsor, Pearson View, we have Mr. Tarun Nanda, the Business Development Manager for the SAARC region. Our gold sponsors now, SLT Mobitel, Mr. Asanga Vimalaratna, General Manager of Revenue Collection. Also gold sponsor, OTR Engineered Solutions Lanka. Mr. Dharmadasa, Finance Manager, collects. Representing our next gold sponsor, Sanasa Life Insurance Company PLC, we have Mr. Kirivandania. Our next gold sponsor is Diesel and Motor Engineering PLC, and representing it we have Mr. Sudat Mahagedar, the General Manager of Finance. We have a representative for Mr. Mahagedar, as we can see. And our next gold sponsor, Hey Carb PLC, Ms. Vikramanayaka collects. I beg your pardon, we have another representative. Two silver sponsors now, Selinko Life Insurance, Mr. Pial Miria Gallage. And we have two representatives. Thank you very much. Soft Logic Life Insurance is next. Mr. Dumidu Senarat, the Head of Finance. National Savings Bank, a silver sponsor, Ms. Devika Silva, Deputy General Manager, International Business. AJ Medichem International Private Limited, Mrs. Padma James, Director. From Built Element Limited, Mr. Hari Darshan, Joint Managing Director. From Akbar Brothers Group, Mr. Gamini Vimalasuriya, the COO. Yes, the applause is appreciated. And also thank you to our print media partner, Vijaya Newspapers, Mr. Sumedh Mendes. Our thanks also to People's Bank, Mrs. Nilmini Premalal, Deputy General Manager, Payment, Process Management and Quality Assurance. Once again, thank you very much to our sponsors. We appreciate them. We ask that our presenters remain on stage for one more thing. We have a launch. We've heard much about how important knowledge is, the sharing of it, the value creation it brings. And so we are proud to launch Volume 12 for 2024, the Silver Jubilee Year of CMA Sri Lanka, the CMA Journal themed Managing Costs for Economic Well-Being of the Nation, as well as the Students' Newsletter. Now, in keeping with technological progress, I would like to direct your attention to the screen because it will be launched at the touch of a button. We will now have copies of the journal presented, and the newsletter is, of course, an e-edition, so you will be able to receive that in your emails. For the presentation, we would also like to invite Mr. Kosala Dishanayaka and Mr. Mangala Fonseca, who is the editor. You will also be able to receive a copy of the journal. Just speak to the CMA staff members. Now, photographs must be taken, of course. Right. Thank you to our presenters. We are now very pleased and honored to be able to present a certificate of fellowship to our keynote speaker today. We shall free our presenters' hands to make this more logistically convenient. And so, the John Curtin Distinguished Professor Dale Pinto is admitted as a fellow member of CMA Sri Lanka. Congratulations. we would like the council members of CMA to join us in this moment, please. I'd like to invite them on stage now. So we have admitted as fellow member of CMA Sri Lanka, the distinguished Professor Dale Pinto. We thank you all. Now, as this inaugural event draws to a close, there are some observations and thanks that must be made. And for those closing remarks, we invite Mr. Hennayaka Bandara, the Vice President of CMA Sri Lanka and Chairman of the Technical Committee. Oh, yes. Apologies. Before the closing, we have one more thing. Because we were showing appreciation, we must make that appreciation tangible. And so we'd like to invite once more on stage our chief guest, Dr. P. Nandalal Veerasinghe, to receive a token of our appreciation. Unfortunately, he's unable to join us on stage at this moment, so we invite our next recipient of the token of appreciation, our keynote speaker, Professor Dale Pinto. Our gratitude in physical form also goes to Mr. Heshana Korupu. I'd like to request our presenters back on stage, please, for that. And now, as was mentioned before, the conclusion and our closing remarks from Mr. Hennayaka Bandara, the Vice President of CMA and the Chairman of the Technical Committee.
Good morning to everyone. Our chief guest, Dr. Nandalal Veerasinghe, Governor, Central Bank of Sri Lanka. Of course, he just left because of his other commitments. Keynote speaker, Professor Dale Pinto, President, CPA Australia. Guest of honor, Mr. Heshana Korupu, President, SAFA, as well as the CA Sri Lanka. Professor Lakshmanar Vatawala, President, CMA, Chair, Conference Committee. Distinguished invitees, ladies and gentlemen. The annual conference of CMA has each year focused on an important aspect affecting the country. This year, we decided to focus on navigating stability towards dynamic growth, which is of critical importance in the turbulent time we live in. The governor affirmed the central bank's commitment to show macroeconomic stability, fiscal consolidation, the stability of the banking sector, which is at the core of economic stability of any country, and helping the government with necessary reforms. Generally, the reforms are an ongoing process. They must move with the times and circumstances if they are to be effective. However, if reforms are to generate optimal benefits to the country, the public must be convinced of the need for reforms. This is a task that requires the joint efforts of both the government as well as the private sector. Therefore, in our technical sessions, we will concentrate on sustaining reform momentum for a strong recovery, IMF reform program, managing costs for dynamic recovery, and other related areas. With those remarks, on behalf of CMA, first I would like to extend my heartiest gratitude to our chief guest, Dr. Nandalal Veerasinghe, Governor of the Central Bank, who has warmly accepted our invitation to join us today and grace this occasion. Governor, even though he's not here, we are deeply honored to have you as the chief guest. It is incredibly significant that we have with us Professor Dale Pinto, President CPA Australia. Professor Dale is an accomplished individual in the field of taxation. We are honored to have Professor Dale here today to share his knowledge and experiences with us. Your participation as the keynote speaker is a tower of strength to all of us. I'm sure that professional expertise shared and practical examples highlighted will immensely help policymakers and officials at various levels in the public sector as well as the private sector. On behalf of CMA and the accountancy profession, we appreciate and thank you very much for delivering an engaging keynote address. Mr. Heshana Kuruppu, President SAFA as well as the Presidency of Sri Lanka, we thank you for accepting our invitation and honoring with your presence as guest of honor at this inauguration. Today, we had an opportunity to hear your thought, and this will surely be going to encourage us in our future events. I also would like to thank Professor Lakshmana Vatawala, Chair Conference Committee, for highlighting the role of professional as management accountants in reviving the economy. More importantly, the leadership provided in organizing this conference. Let me also thank all technical session chairs, co-chairs, speakers, and panelists for accepting our invitation and your participation. Let me also appreciate the invaluable contribution made by the members of the conference committee, technical committee, in particular Dr. Nuwan Gunratna, Ms. Shanti Maheshwaran, Secretary to the committee, and the staff of CMA for the support extended in organizing the conference. I congratulate those who have received the CMA Business Excellence Awards in recognition of the contribution made by them in their respective fields. My best wishes to all of them. Finally, I would like to thank all distinguished invitees, members of the Institute, participants, all sponsors, print media partners, and others who have provided the logistical support. Without your constant support and belief throughout all these years, this conference would not have possible. I wish you all a very productive and meaningful deliberation over the technical sessions. Thank you. Enjoy your rest of the day.